You're listening to Trek FM.
Want to join in the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode? Join the Babel Conference, our listeners' discussion group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field, and we'll look forward to seeing you there.
This is Steve Sansweet of Rancho Obi-Wan, and you're listening to the 602 Club.
There was a little bar in Mill Valley where all the Starfleet trainees used to go.
The 602 Club.
You know it.
I was there more times than I can remember.
What was that?
Nothing. You're the Spider-Man from YouTube.
I'm not.
You were on the ceiling.
What was it? Ned, what are you doing in my room?
May let me in. You said we're gonna finish a Death Star. She doesn't know.
Nobody knows. Well, I mean, Mr. Stark knows because he made my suit, but that's it.
Well, Tony Stark made you that. Are you an Avenger?
Yeah, basically. Dude, you can't tell anybody about this. You gotta keep it a secret.
A secret? Why?
Because you know what she's like. If she finds out people try and kill me every single night, she's not gonna let me do this anymore.
Okay. I'll level with you. I don't think I can keep this a secret. This is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me.
I can't believe this is happening right now.
Welcome, everybody, to the 602 Club, Trek FM's General Geek Show. I am the host here, Matthew Rushing, and I'm very excited to be here, as I always am. I mean, it's just a great place to be. Ruby has the place nicely set up. You know, she serves the best drinks, and we always get to talk about the most fun things. And so, I can't do this alone this week. We're going to be talking about Spider-Man Homecoming, and so I was able to recruit a few gentlemen who wanted to watch it with me and talk about it. Yes, one of those gentlemen, the one and the only, Daniel Proulx. Daniel, it's great to have you back. It's been a while.
It has, and it's super exciting to get to do the Marvel movie that I never thought would actually be in the Marvel universe, so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is very true. I think a lot of people were just excited for the fact that Sony fessed up. We can't handle Spider-Man for some reason. We can't figure out how to do him. So here, Marvel, take it. Show us how it's at least. Please show us how it's done. You know,
we can only hope that Fox sees the light at this point and says, "Okay, take Fantastic Four back and follow suit."
I mean, you know, their Fantastic Four record is dismal, especially that last travesty that happened, and we actually talked about it on this podcast. So you can go back and if I was a good podcaster, I'd know the number, but I don't. But it's back there, and it's yeah, back. After a while, it's been a while, Bruce. I think maybe the last time you were on, we were talking some Star Wars, but it's good to have you on to talk some superhero.
Yeah, Ruby has kicked me out. She told me I couldn't come back for a while because I did something like I shouldn't have been doing from having too many drinks.
Were you writing on the bathroom walls again?
Well,
Is that you?
Yeah, well, I had to write down a phone number, and I didn't know where to put it because I had it on a piece of
I
napkin,
see. Right.
but then I wiped my mouth with it and smeared it, and I couldn't remember the number, and I had to write it on the wall, and I called this girl, and then I found out it was really my wife setting me up, and I got in trouble with her. It was just really bad.
Oof. That's
Wow.
a rough
It was
night.
really bad.
Goodness.
I'm waiting for Marvel
So
Studios.
I guess you haven't been home in a while
I
either.
haven't. I'm waiting for Marvel Studios to save me like they saved Sony.
Oh, well, we'll see. That's a great question. Did they save Sony? Did it happen? That's the question that we'll answer throughout this podcast, I believe. But before we do that, make sure you check us out everywhere. You can find all of the shows here we do on Trek FM, on Apple Podcasts. We're a feature provider there on iTunes. While you're there, give us a star rating and review for the 602 Club. That really does. It really does. It helps the show. It helps us grow. It helps more people find us. Really appreciate it. We've had incredible numbers the last few months, and I think part of that's just been people sharing the show, talking about it, writing reviews. So go over there, start rating and review. And if you do, whatever it is, we'll talk about it on the show. We'll read it on the show, and thank you for your opinion. And you can find us on Twitter at TrekFM. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. You can also go to our listeners-only discussion group on Facebook. That's called the Babel Conference. Couple ways to get there. If you're on our website at trek.fm. You can hit discussion on any of the menu bars, or you can be on Facebook. Just type Babel into the search field, and it'll bring you right there. So, and last but not least, if you're wanting to send us maybe an email, go to trek.fm/contact, choose the show, choose the 602 Club, and that'll come to me and the hosts that week, and we'll be able to answer your question or be able to talk with you further about the subject that we had. So, guys, as we mentioned, Marvel got a hold of Spider-Man. Sony had 2 different iterations of Spider-Man in 15 years, starting way back in 2002 with Sam Raimi, and then, of course, we had Mark Webb's version with Andrew Garfield recently, and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 didn't do what they wanted, and they turned to Marvel. And basically, it was like, help us, Marvel, you're our only hope, which made a lot of sense at that point because, Marvel is pair companies with Disney, and they own Star Wars.
Or Sony said,
anyway,
hey, Marvel, we want to make the money you're making.
That's exactly what they said. It's all about the Benjamins, really. And so I wanted to ask you guys, because obviously we saw Spider-Man in Civil War, and anybody who's listened to our Civil War episode knows how I felt about his inclusion in Civil War. To me, it felt kind of shoehorned in because of the fact that they had just made this deal. They just inked this deal, and they really wanted him in the movie. So I wanted to ask you guys, the opening of this film, we basically... the credit sequence is, Civil War from Peter's perspective. Legitimately, he's filming the whole thing. And I just wanted to ask you guys how that worked for you as the opening to Spider-Man's own movie.
It doesn't feel like this is supposed to be Spider-Man's own movie. I guess when I was going in, I'm thinking this is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And so going in, knowing that, I was thinking, well, where does this movie take place to what we saw in Avengers 2? Or no, I'm sorry, into Civil War. And so I liked this starting out that way because it kind of showed me, okay, yeah, this is where we started off with this Superman, was in the Captain America Civil War.
You mean this Spider-Man? Because he's not Superman.
Because, Matt, you're such a big Superman fan. You talk about it all the time. It just confuses me. But Spider-Man being in Civil War... this kind of helped establish, okay, we're recognizing that this movie doesn't take place before that. This is taking place after. So I kind of enjoyed that and seeing the different angles from his perspective.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the beginning as well. And I think it's important that they do this the way they do because it established a lot of what motivates Peter in this film is the events that had happened to him in Civil War. I mean, that's really kind of the crux of what they were going for here with the story that they were telling, the lesson that he learned at the end. It's a neat way to kind of differentiate. I mean, obviously this was going to be different than the other Spider-Mans, but he does exist in this shared universe, and now they're kind of exploring. Well, what does that mean for these like kind of almost a second generation, though not that far removed? But what is it like with when these kids grow up in this world with these superheroes, and starting with Spider-Man? And I thought it was really interesting, a really interesting way to go about it. And I think they're taking advantage of the fact that Spider-Man is a latecomer in this version of the universe, and I think it was really effective for that.
The opening of the film, where they actually begin after the destruction of New York, I really like that, the way they set up the villain. I thought that was a stellar way to set up the villain's motivation, and so I really liked that. The part with Peter, I wasn't as much a fan of because it kind of felt to me a little bit cheap, of a way of just saying, "Hey, remember when we had him in Civil War?" Instead of like, I already saw him in Civil War. I don't need to be reminded of that. What I would have really liked to have had with Peter is something that reminded me of what Peter himself has been through before he met Tony. And a way of alluding to without necessarily maybe showing us, but just something about Peter's life and the storyline that we are all assuming that Peter has, which is that he lost his uncle, and all of that storyline, but not necessarily maybe having to go the whole way of like using the opening to do that, but just having something, because I wanted there to be, as I watched the movie, I realized I needed there to be more of a connection with the Peter story that we classically know, and there's one very, very minute reference to Peter's life before Tony Stark, and his life is becoming Spider-Man and finding out about his powers and Uncle Ben, basically. But they never mention that. And that actually frustrated the heck out of me, because that's kind of the core of his story.
You said it was there was minor indication in that.
There's one indication in the movie, and that's
but
when
not in the opening
Peter,
scene. Okay.
No. There's one indication throughout the movie. There's one, and Peter says to Ned, his best friend, like, does Aunt May know that you're Spider-Man? And he's like, no, I can't tell her with all that she's been through in the last few months, or, however, I can't remember the exact time frame he uses. That's the only allusion to the fact that Aunt May's been through something traumatic. But it's not just Aunt May, it's Peter too. But there's really there isn't, Spider-Man as an origin story has a very emotional core, and it's centered around what happens with Uncle Ben. And just the same way that Batman is centered around what happens in the alleyway, right? And I just wish that they had used this as an opportunity, the opening, instead of reminding us of what we already knew about Civil War, which I don't need a reminder of because we've all seen it. It would have been cooler, I think, to give something of the backstory of Peter before Civil War happened, because we've already seen that. But I need to be able to connect as the audience to the storyline, because that is the essence of that's the essence of Peter, and the essence of what morphs him into being the character he'll become. So
it's an interesting criticism, because you're saying that you'd rather see the Uncle Ben stuff than the Civil War stuff, and I would argue that they're trying to avoid a lot of criticisms.
Oh, I know they are.
Because I think more people are familiar with the Spider-Man backstory than have seen Civil War. So I think it's actually kind of a more effective use of their time, because let's say, of course, the people we have seen Civil War, a good chunk of Marvel fans, have obviously seen Civil War, but the general going audience, well, there's already kind of a sense of spider fatigue. This is the third reboot in 10 years or whatever it is, and people, I think, are very wary of another new Spider-Man.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think that was their way to avoid it. There's no spider bite. There's no Uncle Ben.
Right. And again, my point isn't to say, and I think I made this pretty clear, I don't want you to do the origin story that way, where you just show us all that stuff, but find a way to tell that part of the story without having to show it all to us.
Yeah,
I'll make my point by saying this. I do another podcast called Cinema Stories, and my podcast partner, she's not a comic book person, right? She enjoys the movies and stuff, but she's not like a comic book person. And so the Spider-Man origin story isn't as familiar to her as, say, like the Batman origin story. I mean, it's not as much a part of the ethos of the world as we think it is. And again, too, I think we always have to remember this will be some kid's first Spider-Man, and they don't know that. They don't know that story. And so therefore, this iteration of Spider-Man to them doesn't have that backstory. And I think that hurts the character as we move forward, because you always have to think about whose story is this going to be the first Spider-Man. In the same way that you struggle with any franchise, how do we catch people up without making them feel like we're catching them up? And honestly, you're absolutely right, Daniel. I think Marvel is scared to death to touch that, and it totally shows in this movie, and they're all the worse for it because they don't have the guts to show Sony how it should have been done the entire time. And if they had done that, I think this movie is a billion times better because the emotional, and let's talk about it, the emotional core of who Spider-Man is as a character is missing from this movie because you don't know where he comes from. It would be like doing Batman, introducing the character Batman to somebody who doesn't know Batman, and excising the alleyway.
This doesn't make. I mean, that's a common criticism. I mean, of the Justice League, not Justice League, the Batman v Superman movie is like, oh, okay, why are we seeing this again? Everybody does know it already, and I don't know. It's just a really. I didn't really consider it the way that you're presenting it when I was watching it. I mean, I obviously took note that there was no reference or flashback or anything like that to Uncle Ben. I just don't think that's the story that they were telling here. I mean, this is a Peter Parker who has learned the lesson. We don't have
to hear... Has he learned that lesson, though? That's the point.
I think with the great power thing, yeah, I think that's what motivates him for the entire film is the fact that he's trying to do more. He's like ready to drop out of high school to go and be a hero somewhere. He's not
right, but I don't think he's. That's the point. I think he. We don't know that he's had that conversation, and I don't feel it in this movie because he's not. Because really, Peter's arc the emotional core for Peter in the movie is this: he wants to be an Avenger. He thinks that's cool. That's his main goal, and what he learns in the movie is that he doesn't have to be Avenger or be out there to make a difference, right? That has nothing to do with great power comes great responsibility. That is maybe tangentially directed in that general direction, but that's not the core of who. Again, the very core, the very essence of Peter Parker as a character is with great power comes great responsibility, and the lesson that he learns from making a choice to not stop something that causes Uncle Ben's death. Without that emotional core presented in this movie, you end up with a much shallower character arc.
I guess, like, in the next Batman movie, I don't want there to be another...
But the point is that they already showed that to you in Batman v Superman. You don't need to do that again.
But if they rebooted Batman tomorrow and didn't show us that scene, and then we just had a Batman film, or like take any number of one-off Batman stories, or any character, really, it doesn't really matter. You can definitely tell a good Spider-Man story without showing Uncle Ben. Absolutely. It's been done before.
I think you absolutely can. I don't think they do it here.
Okay.
And that's and the part of it is that emotional core, and I tie that too with the mentors that Peter doesn't have throughout the film. There's nobody there to pick up that Uncle Ben slack, which I was really disappointed in. I thought it was going to be May. I mean, you cast Marissa Tomei, and you give her absolutely nothing to do in this film. In fact, I thought that the moment where Peter loses, the suit, and the fact that he's distraught, I thought that was going to be a moment where she spoke some wisdom into his life. But there was just nothing there, and I was really disappointed in that. And then on top of that, I really thought that this movie was going to be the one in which Tony Stark showed some growth and tried to be a mentor to somebody. And yet Tony just kind of becomes this removed parent, this remote parent, who only comes in when Peter does something wrong and takes away his toys instead of actually mentoring him and showing him how to be a hero. I mean, Tony is the first hero in this Marvel Cinematic Universe. If anybody should be, hopefully, learn something to teach somebody something, it should be him, right? But
he sucks at it.
Yeah, he absolutely sucks at it. And then he tries to take credit for it at the end, which is just, it makes me want to punch the guy because he's such a, I can't say it's a family show. And he continues to be one, and that's what's so frustrating. They have all these moments where somebody could have taken that core of the Spider-Man story with the Uncle Ben stuff and been kind of that character for Peter, and nobody does that for him. And it just really bothered me that this kid is trying to figure out these powers and has absolutely nobody to turn to but his best friend, who doesn't know any better than he does.
No.
Like, he's surrounded by heroes, you know, like, but nobody will actually show him, like, and it really reminded me of this whole idea of something I've been reading a lot about. Was like, Ben Sass has a great book, the Nebraska senator, about the vanishing American adult. And part of that is we're not passing on adulthood to our kids. And I saw that so clearly in this movie. Like, nobody is showing Peter how to be an adult or have responsibility, especially with the powers that he had. It just, I don't know. It just, what did you think, Bruce? Because I feel like I've been talking too much.
I already knew your opinion, so I've been waiting for this. So, I totally get what you're saying. I think if we had the origin story with Uncle Ben, or even just acknowledgement of what happened to his parents and how that affected him, I think that would have given more emotional weight to the character and to the story. However, I think the fact that we have had several Spider-Man movies that have addressed the origin story, I didn't expect to see that in this movie. I didn't go into this movie as, oh, this is a restart again. This is another Spider-Man 1. I really wasn't expecting an origin story. I thought maybe it might be addressed in here. Maybe it would be mentioned. Maybe there'd be a brief scene, maybe in the middle or something like that. But it really stood out to me when going to the movie. My kids, 15 and 13, both girls, the oldest is really into superheroes. They both said in the car, oh my gosh, I hope it's not another, oh, we got to see Uncle Ben die and him become Spider-Man. We've seen that. We don't want that anymore. I hope it's not like that. We've already gotten that story a couple of times. And afterwards, they were praising the fact that none of that was brought up, that we went right into a Spider-Man story. He's already Spider-Man. And they said it didn't feel as doom and gloom as the last Spider-Man. He seemed always depressed. This was more fun. This was more lighthearted. And maybe that's not what you want, Matt, or some other people want, or whatever. And yes, there could have been more weight to that. But for my kids, this worked better for them. So it just depends what you want to put into a Spider-Man movie and what you want to get out of it. And I think it worked because I do think it was a lot of fun. I thought it was funny, your comment when you said, I didn't need to see what happened in Civil War. I already knew what happened. Well, that's kind of what my kids were echoing about Uncle Ben. I've already seen what happened with Uncle Ben. I already know how he becomes Spider-Man. I don't want to see that happen. So it just depends where you're coming from going into the movie.
I don't know if this is the case or not, and it may be that they haven't even thought this far ahead yet, but it's also possible that either Ben or Peter's parents or both will come back in flashbacks or something else. They'll be connected to the larger Marvel Universe in some way. Maybe that's what they're saving it for as well. Obviously, I do think the main goal of the filmmakers here was to avoid the tired, cliched old origin story at this point. And I feel the same way that your kids do. I was just excited to be in a Spider-Man movie, and I didn't, I was okay. I was ready to go, and obviously not everybody feels that way, but I was totally okay with that decision.
Well, I know this is going to sound silly, but I got into Spider-Man watching the old 60s cartoon, and I saw Spider-Man and his amazing friends, and I never knew the origin story at those points, and I still enjoyed Spider-Man. But of course it didn't have the weight like the movies had then.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think you can have fun in a movie, but still have weight. And I think what frustrated me was that watching the movie, it felt like Marvel was so self-conscious about not wanting to repeat what had been done before that they did excise some of the heart and core and emotion that you're supposed to feel with Peter as Spider-Man out of it. And it was, to me, I felt like detrimental to the character himself to not have some connection. Yeah, and I don't think it needed to be a complete origin story, but I don't think that not referencing it all, that or just avoiding it altogether is necessarily the best option. And on top of that, I don't think that Peter having a good mentor throughout the movie wouldn't have really helped. And specifically, I think on that, I really would have liked to have seen Tony training him to be a hero so that the moment that Peter, quote unquote, rebels and he has to take away the suit and then saves the day, it would have been a stronger character moment. I
was
think,
hoping for that.
between the two.
I was hoping for that when we got to the ferry scene, and I thought, okay, now Tony's going to step up. But instead, he took away from Peter. I was like, okay, well, maybe he's putting, this is a hard lesson. That's what he's teaching Peter. And then later on, we find out, well, he took credit for that, but it was obvious that that wasn't his intent. It wasn't to teach Peter a lesson. It was just, no, you're not ready. I'm taking you out. Gone. See ya. Bye, kid. Have fun.
Tony has a bit of a guilt complex.
Yeah.
It's it's funny. I think another thing that Marvel was really concerned about, was maybe overusing Tony in this film.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I was actually, even as you won't find a bigger, Tony Stark fan
coming
than
from
me,
the Iron Man #1 fan himself.
I will say that I was a little concerned that he would be too much in this film and kind of overshadow Spider-Man. I think he was in it just the right amount, but I do agree that they could have tweaked how the interactions went down. But I'm glad that they didn't throw him everywhere.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right too. I mean, we keep saying it. Marvel is afraid this whole movie. They're afraid of the origin story. They're afraid of putting in Tony too much. They're afraid of all of this stuff. And it's like, just grab it by the horns and do it if you totally believe that it's the right thing to do. Don't be afraid. Just stand by whatever it is you believe you're going to do, and we'll probably buy it, right? I mean, Marvel's been pretty decent at giving us bold stories for the most part, I mean, putting all the heroes into Avengers had never been done. And then they proved that it could be done. I feel like putting in or tweaking Tony a little bit, maybe a couple more scenes, but just allowing him to, and again, you can take Tony and not be him as Iron Man, just have him as Tony Stark, a guy teaching a young boy how to be a hero because he has some experience in this area. And it can be a growth moment for Tony Stark, which would have been awesome. Instead, he just continues to play the ultimate playboy. I'm just really.
I know he's about to get married.
Yeah. Yeah. So that happened apparently. That's such a throw-in annoyance. But anyway, that's a whole other part of the movie. But allow that to be a part of the storyline. So you are using Tony in a way that's totally different than how he's ever been used in any other film before. So it doesn't feel like there's too much of him because he's not Iron Man. He's just Tony. Basically, I feel like it would have been a really nice progression from where Tony had been at the end of Iron Man 3, where it really felt like he had learned something. And then, of course, he regresses badly in the last two movies he's been in. And then it would have just been, if this had happened right after Iron Man 3, I could have totally seen them being able to pull off having just Tony in the movie, being the, mentor. And, part of it, too, was the frustration of watching all these people abdicate their role of responsibility, helping this young boy become a hero. I mean, Tony's kind of abdicating his role. He gives him a suit and throws him out the door and was like, be good, kid. Happy's not taking his responsibility seriously. He's too busy packing things. And then they literally, people are abdicating their roles all over this movie. So Pete, Happy and Tony literally pack up all his valuables in a drone plane and then let it go. Like,
yeah, I didn't get that.
Well, I mean, it was just so that they could use it to get hijacked.
Right.
But I was like, nobody would put like all of that tech in a plane that's not guarded by, at least 50 guys.
Or at least 50 iron suits.
Exactly.
As
Exactly. I mean, it was just, there was some really dumb things. But most of all, what I wanted was for Peter himself and for Tom Holland to be serviced as the character of Spider-Man in a little bit more emotional way.
So to me, this movie is very much a high school movie, and
absolutely.
And I don't disagree with what you're saying. I never thought that way when I was watching the film, or when I was kind of reflecting on it later. I never thought that Peter needed a mentor. I think this is more of a coming of age kind of thing. Like, he can do this himself. He doesn't need these adults. This is about him and his friends and what's going on in his life. And while I can totally see what you're saying, it seemed to me a very personal thing for him. And and I think too, the danger is having Iron Man hang out with him the whole movie and being super awesome would take away from that. Peter becomes the hero in this story himself. He doesn't do it through these other means. It's just, I don't know. I kind of thought it was. I just didn't even think of it. I guess I should say it never even entered my mind for that to be an element. Of the story.
I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is the John Hughes Superman, or this is the John Hughes Spider-Man.
See, I'm not the only one.
I mean, this is the John Hughes. I mean, it's like the Breakfast Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Where parents are absent,
because this is literally the Breakfast Club as a superhero film. And I completely agree with you, Daniel. That's pretty much what they're going for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that on the surface, for the most part, and I think for most people, obviously, look at the Rotten Tomatoes score, it works. I could not believe, after I saw this movie, I could not believe the Rotten Tomatoes score. I was like, I don't know what people are smoking, but this movie's like a 65 or 70. It's not a 93. I think there's a way to do both.
Sure, I'm sure. Yeah.
And so, what I'm saying is what I liked some of this. I was disappointed that there weren't some other things in there. But to your point, I think this really is about finding your place. Like Peter kind of having that teenage desire to be anywhere but where he is. And specifically for him, he's like, I'm an Avenger. I could be an Avenger. I can do it. It's like, come on, coach, put me in. I know I can do it. And I think, learning the lesson of that where you are is just as important as where you could be, if not more important, and the good you can do where you are. I thought that was great. I do think that's a very important, lesson that he learns throughout the film of that, what? I don't have to be an Avenger to be somebody who can help people. And I thought that was probably the hallmark lesson that he kind of ends up learning, which is the very teenage lesson too, right? I don't have to go around the world to be able to help people. I could just help people next door. Or like the lady who bought me a churro after I gave her, directions.
So the fact that this does take place in a different universe from the other Spider-Man movies we've seen, and you're talking about the origin story of Uncle Ben, his death, but since this is a different universe, different story, is there even an Uncle Ben that exists? Did he really die?
That's a great question. I mean, I think you actually bring up a great question, and
I mean, we don't know the origin of this Spider-Man.
No, we absolutely don't know. We actually don't. All we know is that he was bit by a spider.
Which that frustrated me.
And it died.
Yes.
And it died. Yeah, it's dead. It's dead, Ned. The spider's dead.
I just hated that he said it was just a spider. Like any old spider can give you powers, but whatever.
So you are
because
right.
Isn't the Aunt May that we've seen in comics and other?
No, this is not the Aunt May we've seen before.
No, Aunt May's never been married.
So I have a question for you guys too. Do you remember in Civil War whether they mention? I mean, Peter alludes to when he's talking to Tony when he says like, if there's something bad that's going to happen and you can stop it and you don't, are you responsible? Like, is that their way of saying the Uncle Ben story happened without them telling the story? You think? Okay.
I think so. I think they're just trying to avoid that line, and they replace it in this film with a line that Tony says. Can't remember what it is.
If you're nothing without the suit, then you don't deserve the suit.
Yeah, and I assume it's all there. The radioactive spider wasn't just some regular spider. The Uncle Ben got shot or killed or whatever, or run over by a car, whatever it is, and I think that's what the audience is meant to do. I don't think that they're going with some crazy new origin story of Spider-Man. I think they avoided it because it's mundane at this point. It's the usual, and it's just easier to gloss
I agree with that, but let's look. We have show notes here, and Matt, your friend Sean at the Nerd Party pointed out, and I remember this now, that Liz, at the end of the movie, she lost her dad, of course, being locked up in the jail, and Peter says to her, I can't imagine how hard this is for you to lose your dad. Well, he does. He's lost his dad and he's lost his uncle. So how can he not imagine how hard this would be for her to lose her dad unless she didn't lose?
He literally lost his dad. Like, his dad's dead, not in
Is
prison.
he? I don't know.
And his uncle's dead. So
I think therein lies the problem. I mean, that's a totally different situation. I mean, imagine. I mean, yes, of course, going through the loss of a parent, I can't imagine is, I'm sure, tremendously difficult. Knowing that you're learning that your parent is alive and is a terrible thieving murderer psychopath man is a totally different experience than those. I didn't read deeper than that. I can't understand what it would be like to learn my father was a supervillain with a terrible nickname. Yeah. Like, that's what I assumed he was saying. I didn't think he was saying he has no idea what loss is.
I think you're right.
That seems like a big stretch.
I mean, I see what you're saying. What I think happened, legitimately, let's just look at the facts. There are 6 writers on this movie. 6. And I'm pretty sure that none of them thought about this. And part of what frustrates me about the movie is this feels like Spider-Man Light. Like, it's just glossing over all of the Spider-Man stuff. And I want to speak specifically to that with teching the spider. Why in the world do we need to give Spider-Man an Iron Man suit, basically? Now, I absolutely love Karen in this movie. I thought she was hysterical. Not only the fact that she's Jennifer Connelly, which is, married to Paul Bettany, who's Jarvis and now Vision. That's awesome meta stuff, right? And she was a hysterical character in the film. But why does every character have to be Iron Man-ish? Spider-Man has his own powers and his own things that make him special, and they took most of them away by giving him a suit that makes him more like Tony and less like Spider-Man. And it really frustrated me because I loved Karen, but I hate what it does for the character of Spider-Man because Spider-Man doesn't have a lot of special powers anymore. They've kind of stripped all of his other powers that you see in the comics, like his Spidey sense. He doesn't need a Karen. That's what the Spidey sense is for. Like, they've really taken away a lot of the things that make Peter as Parker special as Spider-Man by giving him a suit that just makes him Iron Man. Like,
yeah, I thought the same thing. When I was watching it, I was like, oh, okay, so what, Spider-Man is now Iron Man? I mean, it's like that same thing where we're seeing through his eyes, we're seeing all the tech gadgets, and it's pointing him in the right direction, and the suit's talking to him, and there's all these little gadgets and things, and it's got advanced parts that he hasn't even learned how to use yet. It's like, it's not just he's in a suit and web swinging around, he's got all these weird gadgets, but I got to a point where I thought, okay, I just need to accept that's in this version, because really what the MCU is turning out to be, or has been for the longest time maybe, is this is Iron Man's universe and all these superheroes are in it. Because it seems to be even, we're seeing Iron Man appearing just about everywhere now. And maybe he's not in Guardians of the Galaxy yet, but I can see him showing up. But it really does feel like this whole universe is kicked off, and this is the Iron Man universe, in my opinion. And so the superheroes work and evolve around him.
Yeah, to be fair, Spider-Man is no stranger to gadgetry.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Always. Actually, what I was
his web shooters, that he built.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. creating his own web,
Which is, I will say, I was actually concerned. The biggest concern I had about the suit was that it would diminish Peter Parker's brilliance, his scientific ability, which I think they kind of skirted around because he was still developing his own fluid and all of that stuff, and they showed his it's not super intelligence, but his extreme intelligence to a good degree.
Was he intelligent? Because I got a bone to pick with it, but finish.
I guess I was just going to say that. Again, this is the story that they are deciding to tell, and like you were just saying, Bruce, it's just that he is now interacting with Iron Man. Iron Man built this suit. And I think logistically they did it because he spends a good chunk of the middle of the film by himself, and it kind of would have been boring to just. I guess he would have had to talk to himself. I don't know what he would have been doing, but
right. I know why they give him Karen, because exactly what you said. They need him to somebody to bounce ideas off of, and like if. And I got to credit Sean again from the Nerd Party saying this, but if the sequel isn't Peter and Karen falling in love her style, I don't want to see it, because that should be the sequel. But I was really frustrated actually with the way that they treated Peter and his genius. Peter is supposed to be super smart, like off the charts smart. That's one of the things that makes him so awkward in the comics, is that he doesn't necessarily relate to people all that well all the time, because he's just really smart, super science geeky kid. And that point when he is confronting Vulture at the end, and he doesn't realize what's happening around him because he hasn't figured out that the villain isn't going for him at all. He's collapsing the building on him. I was like, really? Come on, dude. Spider-Man's supposed to be really smart. He should have been able to figure that out. And I don't feel like that they. I guess the point I'm complaining about is they don't really showcase Peter or Spider-Man very well in this movie. Like, I was hoping that Marvel was going to get Spider-Man right, and they don't. They don't showcase us what makes Peter and Spider-Man special as a character, and really. Put a highlight on his powers, other than the fact that he makes webs. Like, that's the only thing that we know that he does. Other than that, I don't know anything else about this character, other than the fact that he got bit by a spider and he figured out a way to make webs. Like, there's nothing else here. Like, there's no Spidey sense, which I thought would have been really cool to finally add to a Spider-Man character, kind of really explore what that meant for him, but that's not there in this movie, because we give him a suit and it takes care of everything for him.
Well, Kevin Feige has said that the reason they didn't explicitly show Spider-Sense in this movie was because they didn't want the callbacks to the other films.
But you're afraid of the other films instead of just showing them how it should have been done.
It's not a thing you have to show. I mean, there's specific. It's something that he experienced. I mean, I assume every time I see Spider-Man in any medium, that the things that he's capable of doing physically would be impossible without Spidey sense. And of course, there have been creative ways to try and show it, but it's not anything that you actually visibly have to see. Like, it's not like his eyes light up bigger, or in the Sam Raimi films when it would just go into slow-mo mode, which was essentially Spider Sense in that movie. But that's just one way of doing it. I don't know. You could come up with a creative way. I'm not saying they shouldn't have or whatever.
Right.
I just always assume that it's part of his character, even if it's not explicitly stated.
Well, and that's great. Again, I think for you or me, because we know, right? But there's a whole generation of kids that this may be their first Spider-Man, and they don't know crap about Spider-Man right now. Like, that none of that's in the movie. All they know is that he's a kid inside a suit that talks to him, and he can make fluid that turns into a web.
Yep, that's the Spider-Man.
Which is super cool.
That is the Spider-Man.
Yeah, and I think that's a little frustrating to again, they're so afraid. They're driven. This whole movie is driven by a fear.
I mean, I know what you're saying, but I just don't. I don't know. I just feel like they're trying to do something different.
Yeah. And maybe, but what they're doing, I don't think is better.
Well, it may not be better, but it may not be worse either.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the way I look at it is I try not to compare like, oh, well, this is the way Spider-Man's supposed to work, and this is what the story's supposed to be, and this is I mean, that's like saying, oh, we're going to do a reboot of Star Trek The Next Generation, and then we get on here and go, why didn't Wesley save the ship? Wesley always saves the ship, and it's like,
yeah,
well, maybe they wanted to downplay Wesley. You know what I'm saying? It's like they want to go something different with this, and I guess I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm bothered by, I'm not necessarily comparing it to the other films. I'm comparing it to classic Spider-Man comic book, like what we know of Spider-Man and the important things about what makes Spider-Man
But
Spider-Man.
Hasn't those evolved over the years? They're probably not.
No, I'm sure that but I mean, there's always kind of a classic thing. It's like, Superman in the comics used to be able to shoot a mini version of him out of his hand, right? That's not a classic power. That's not one that stayed around. But there are classic powers that we all know that kind of are a part of every iteration of Spider-Man or Superman. The same thing with Spider-Man. He has a certain set of skills and powers that kind of are in every iteration, and there are probably some comic books that have taken things super far one way or super far the other way, but there's always kind of a baseline middle. I feel like that's what I'm arguing for, is that that baseline middle to be in this film, because I was just hoping that Marvel was finally going to do Spider-Man, like really nailed everything.
I guess it depends on what you consider quintessential Spider-Man. A lot of those elements were there for me. He is smart. He is shown to be smart. I mean, he's 15 years old. I mean, so we can't expect him to be completely Spider-Man man yet, right? But he's obviously very intelligent. He's slightly snarky. He's got these base abilities like you're talking about. I don't know. It seemed pretty. It was just a young Spider-Man. It was like Spider-Man year one, essentially. And of course, he will grow and develop and change throughout the course of the movies, and maybe in new ways, maybe in more established ways. But I don't know. He seemed like a good kind of Spider boy kind of a situation.
Spider boy. Let's talk about some of the characters. And first, let's talk about Tom Holland, because I have to say, if there's anything I love about this movie, I think it's him. I mean, clearly he's absolutely 100% the best part of this movie. And I think it's because he nails the character of Peter, and he nails the snarkiness of Spider-Man perfectly. He's the perfect Spider teen kid thing. Like he just is really good. And that's what excites me to maybe see, hopefully, a movie where they're willing to take some more risks, because I feel like he deserves it, because he just did everything perfectly as that character. I wish they had just given him better, but he's the best thing about this movie. I absolutely
I thought he was great too. I loved him. I believed he was a teenage kid, even though my 15-year-old daughter said, there's no way he's 15. I'm 15. And we had to look it up on IMDb, and he just recently turned 21, so she was right about that. But I mean, I thought he really portrayed a teenager, a 15-year-old. I mean, one thing I love about this movie and his performances is just when he's not being Spider-Man, when he's just the high school kid and trying to figure things out and fitting in and having his
playing with Lego Death Stars.
Yeah, it's like, I love that stuff. It's like, it's funny, before this movie came out, I said to my daughters, I said, some of my favorite superhero movies are the ones where it's not just about them dealing with their powers and getting the bad guy. It's like how they have to deal with everyday life. And then they've got this weird thing about their life, and that is being a superhero, and how you balance those things. And I love it how, even when he's confronted with something important, he's like, yeah, but I've got a Spanish quiz. It's like,
yeah,
that's so important, as a teenage kid. It's like, these, I've got a quiz, or I've got a date, or whatever, and how do I balance something really serious with those things, because those are serious to me too, and they're earth-shattering in that time in your life. So I really did enjoy his performance, and those, I love those lines that they were giving him in those situations.
Yeah, he's great. You guys have said it as much as I can. He's just a really good Spider-Man. He's definitely my favorite version of Peter Parker that I've seen live action, without a doubt.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I could not agree with. Yeah. So Zendaya as MJ. I mean Michelle Jones. Thoughts?
So I had to ask about this because I wasn't aware. She's apparently a singer of some sort. I guess
apparently she's big on like the Disney Channel or something.
Yeah.
Like I'm like I don't know.
That's what I said. I looked over.
I turned 38 today. I don't know this crap.
I looked over at my friend after we were watching the credits, and I'm like, "Don't you have to be super famous before you can be a one name person?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, she's some singer or something." And I'm like, "Oh okay, I guess I didn't know."
Wait, you're not listening to Disney XD teeny pop music? No,
not
yeah,
my thing.
shocker.
No. I didn't love her. She played too much manic pixie girl. I don't know. It's just like too cool. I don't know. She felt forced and a bit much. I didn't like. I don't know. She felt over the top for me.
She's too cool for school.
Yeah.
But she's way too cool for school, is what you're saying.
Yeah. She just felt a bit too
Yeah,
much.
I agree. Maybe just a little too much. But I did enjoy her character. I mean, she had some scenes that were actually, pretty funny, but it was maybe a little too far with her, a little too much of that stereotype of I'm just too cool character. But I did enjoy her when she was in Shake It Up on Disney Channel. So, I mean...
Well, yeah,
there you go.
You've got girls who would totally
they
know
knew
who
exactly
she is,
who she was.
Thank you, Bruce. Well, and I think that's exactly why she's probably in this movie, because that teeny bopper crowd would know exactly who she is. Did people say teeny bopper anymore? Probably not.
I don't
Sorry.
know.
I apologize to all teeny boppers out there.
It made me curious. I don't know. Maybe she had like a stricter shooting schedule or whatever. But like her line at the Washington Monument was very funny. But then she sits out that scene, and I thought it was really strange. I didn't know why. I guess unless if it was intentional, maybe the writers wanted him to focus on Liz and not on her until the end of the movie or whatever. But I don't know.
It's also a statement that may or may not be true. I actually did some research on that, and there's no actual conclusive evidence that that's true. So, yeah.
I'll have to head down there and see what they say.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Maybe the guy will shrug at me.
Yeah. But, yeah, that bothered me just because it's like, don't just throw stuff out there like that, anyway. The other thing that frustrated me, and this is, again, where I saw the fear at the end, where we're like, oh, my name's Michelle Jones, but my friends call me MJ, and I'm like, and I know Kevin Feige's come out and said, like, well, we just didn't want to reiterate, like, oh my gosh, why are you so scared about just, like, using classic Spider-Man things, I thought it was fantastic to have the main love interest be Liz in this movie. And it never really works out for her and Peter, but I thought it was a fantastic way of skirting all of that. And so that maybe 2 years down the road when the next Spider-Man comes out, you could put in a Gwen Stacy or a Mary Jane without it being like, oh, we're just doing it again. Like, this was the perfect way to do that. And instead, they blow it by just making her an MJ, but not the MJ.
Their comments about this are actually what bother me the most, because they seem to be implying that MJ is still MJ, and this person is just called MJ, meaning there is another MJ out there. Well, if you're going to do this, if you're going to have that reveal at the end, what the heck is the point if you're just going to come up with a different character down the road? I don't even... What was that scene about? Like, that's fine. Be bold. Change it up. That's cool. But don't, half do it. I don't understand the point of that at all. It just makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, that is weird, because not even just she reveals at the end, oh, I go by MJ, but then she looks at Peter in a way that suggests she's interested in him, as if, this is going to be the next love interest, but if she's not really going to be the Mary Jane and the love interest in the next movie, then what is the point of all that?
Absolutely. And then I just was like, guys, you are screwing yourselves over by being so frightened of touching anything that has anything to do with classic Spider-Man mythology just because it's been done before. It's like...
They probably thought that people would see this and not think, of course, that's MJ, and at the end go, oh my gosh, did you see at the end? Michelle's actually MJ. It blew my mind. And I don't think that worked.
It didn't. Not at all. I do want to talk about Ned, Jacob Batalon, who plays Ned. God, I love that kid. Not only did I love him in the movie, but I love that he's so excited about being the dude in the chair, about being the cliche. Like, his biggest thing is he wants to be the cliche. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, the chair thing. I mean, every superhero has that, and so it was cool that he's doing that. And then when he is sitting in the chair, he's going between computers and looking things up in the school. And what was it that he was looking up on the computer? That how to drive a car, like where the
headlights are
in the car.
Which, by the way, now thinking about it, the AI could have easily told him that, but
yes.
Oh, wait, he didn't. Anyways,
he didn't have his AI.
I forgot he didn't have the AI.
Yeah, no Karen then. So
but,
that's don't drive without Karen is what you're saying.
Yeah, apparently. But even though this shot has been in all the trailers, it's still hilarious to me of him wearing this Spider-Man mask.
Yes.
He was a great character. He was a lot of fun, a really good sidekick character for Spider-Man who doesn't really have. I mean, he always has the classic friendship with Harry, but doesn't have beyond that like any kind of fun friendship. So this is a character I hope they keep going and he's becomes important.
The relationship that they had too, I thought was really nice, and I thought it worked really well. I was very happy with Ned, and I'm like you, I absolutely want to see more of him. What about Marissa Tomei? We touched a little bit on her as May Parker, and I really like Marissa Tomei. I've liked her in a lot of things. Movie-wise, I think she's a very good actress and sometimes underrated, even though she's won an Oscar. And I was really excited for them to kind of see a take on a younger Marissa Tomei, and I was really sad to see her just kind of turn into a joke about how hot she is. I was like, this is not serving the character.
She's she get a lot to do. 3 or 4 scenes. There was a couple of good parts with her in it. And I do really like the younger Aunt May. The old elderly Aunt May never really made sense to me as a character anyways. So I like that they kind of modernized her. I don't know. Nothing particularly stuck out or bothered me about the character. I thought it was just, it worked. It was just, it was Aunt May. That's who it was.
Yeah, I agree. It wasn't outstanding. It wasn't that I left thinking, oh wow, Marissa Tomei was just so incredible in that movie, and oh my gosh, she really made the movie for me. She did a great job for what she had. It was good. I liked the Aunt May being younger. That was interesting. Again, it was just a different take, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I guess I just wanted more from her, and not from her like she should have done something different. But I think she's just a character. She's an actress who deserves better material. And apparently there was a scene that did get cut out, unfortunately, with her, that she has come out and said that she was sad that got cut out with, I think, her saving somebody and it kind of helping, she thought, kind of explain where Peter gets some of his morals and stuff from. But yeah, she's a great actress. I felt like they could have utilized her better, and it really would have helped. So
well, with the last scene there and the changing dynamic, hopefully she can be more involved in the next few films.
Absolutely, absolutely agree. And I think, like Lois, knowing who Clark is in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, I think I really like that dynamic, that we just don't keep having these women be oblivious to things that they shouldn't be oblivious to. Like she said earlier in the movie, I know you sneak out of this house every night. She's not oblivious to the things that are going on. And so for her to finally know that, I think is actually very helpful for the character in the end. So, I guess, we don't really need to talk about Robert Downey Jr. He's doing Robert Downey Jr. being Iron Man. It's nothing new. One last thing, though, we talked a little bit about. Wait, Pepper is back? Like, what? Like, can we just, and why is so many things happening to the Iron Man character off screen these days? We broke up. Now we're back together. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I liked that she's back because I've always liked the Pepper character, but then I was kind of felt like it was emotional whiplash to finding, after everything that happened in, Civil War, where it's such a big deal that they're not together, and now it's like, oh, it's no big deal, we're fine. We've been waiting for you to get married the whole time. Like, it's a joke. It just, it annoyed me.
I liked it because, it doesn't bother me that these big changes are happening between movies, because this is months or years between these films. We haven't seen Pepper since, we get the reference in Civil War, but we haven't seen her since Iron Man 3. So, and I like the fact that they didn't just drop the character. Who knows? Maybe Gwyneth Paltrow had been busy in the intervening parts there. But I don't want. She's a much more interesting character than like Jane Foster, so I don't want them to just drop that character like that. I think she's super important, so I'm glad she's back either way, and it served to be a funny scene as well. So.
Yeah, I remember hearing some reactions from the audience that seemed positive, like, ooh, it's Pepper, oh yeah, like people seemed happy to see her. So I guess it's self-serving to, let's put Pepper in there to show they're back together, because maybe they got a lot of people that were upset about
and
that.
I'm totally glad that she's back. Like you said, she's so much better than Jane Foster, or, I mean, I can't even name Hulk's love interests. I don't remember. Yeah. Betty. Yeah. Yes. And I think too, Gwyneth Paltrow has just really brought life to that character. So I'm glad that she's back. It was just like, oh my gosh. And yeah, the funniest part is like, I've been carrying this around since 2008. So that was great. One last thing we do need to talk about before we get to some final thoughts is Vulture, Michael Keaton. And I wanted to know what you guys thought of him as a villain, because if there has been any weakness, I think, to a lot of Marvel films, it has been the villain. So what did you think of this as the main bad guy?
I think they made the Vulture, who by his very nature is a terrible and silly villain, as menacing and intimidating as is possible. And I think, of course, that's entirely because of Michael Keaton being an excellent actor. I don't know. The characters they're picking for the villains in these films, and if they keep going with what they're doing, it's silly to me. Spider-Man has a fantastic rogues gallery, and they seem to love to either pick the same ones over and over or pick the silly ones. But again, that's just my personal opinion. But I think pretty standard Marvel fare as far as the villain goes. He doesn't rise above. Pretty average, I'd say. But like I said, every good aspect of his character comes from the actor. And the only other really remarkable thing about him is the twist, which halfway through the film when you find out that he is Liz's father, which I had read that spoiler months ago and completely forgot. So when that scene, that upbeat homecoming dance prepared scene, is happening and all the music is jovial, and then he gets to the door and it's the Vulture, who is, Michael Keaton. That presence is intimidating. It was good for that, So I thought that was super well done and a really good scene. And just the way that whole situation played out in the car ride and everything, really well done. Really well done.
I can't tell you how many times I heard in the theater behind me, my second time seeing it, people go like, oh, shh, just like totally surprised. So you're absolutely right. It got a lot of people. And even me, like, I hadn't seen any spoilers because I haven't been really paying attention, I felt like the main trailer spoiled this movie enough because it was pretty much the whole film, arc-wise for Peter. I get my suit taken away and then, all this stuff. So I was trying to stay away from that stuff. And so I'm really glad I did, because this was a good reveal that they were connected.
Yeah, the reveal was actually kind of funny for us because my wife is always trying to guess reveals, and sometimes in movies she says something before the reveal and we're like, oh my gosh, yeah, wait, why did you do that? Now, because now we're, and she didn't get this time, which after the movie we're all like, hey, yeah, you didn't guess that he was, the dad or whatever. I would say, I mean, I like Michael Keaton in this movie. I like Michael Keaton in general. I guess my favorite scenes with him are the ones where he's not really the Vulture. I just like getting pure Michael Keaton, just like, the scene in the car with Peter and talking to him, hey, buddy, we got an issue here and I'm just going to address it to you and I'm going to talk to you like I'm a dad talking to a kid, and it's like, I just love that aspect. I think he made the character. I mean, the Vulture, when he's flying around and doing whatever, yeah, that's fine. It's a bad guy, but Michael Keaton, class act.
Michael Keaton is a fantastic bad guy. Like, he is able to turn on this villainous glint in his eye. Like when he's like, does that work? And he points it at the guy and shoots him. He doesn't even know what it is, really. he thinks he knows what it is, quote unquote, and he just vaporizes him into dust. I mean, yeah, he was fantastic. The thing that kind of bothered me about him was he did that whole cliched, well, I've been stuck it to the man, so now I'm going to stick it to the man. And I'm like, you're not a blue-collar worker, dude. You live in, like, upper middle class, Queens in a really swank house. You're not that guy, you're claiming to be. You're just a poser, pretending to be like, I'm a blue-collar worker who got,
Well, maybe he was that
maybe.
guy.
I don't.
In the beginning of the, I think
then-
it was in the beginning of the film. He was
Yeah.
just some construction guy, and then it was him selling all those weapons that allowed him to kind of get that
Possibly.
get that lifestyle.
Right.
Possibly.
Yeah.
But they never show that to us. They tell it to us that he's, anyway.
Right. Well, I mean, he is the Batman, and the Batman's
Well,
after
that's true.
Spider-Man. So
Which,
that's pretty
did you catch there's a very quick Batman reference. Vulture drops Peter, and there's a shot of Vulture against the moon, and it's the Batman signal.
Oh, no.
It's awesome. It's very quick. So
I
if
didn't
you do
notice
happen to watch it again, look for that moment. It's very funny. I was like, hey, Batman. The other part is like, what the heck is Department of Damage Control? And why is Tyne Daly wasted as this character? Like, she's a great actress, and like they give her 3 lines in the movie.
I was very surprised to see this in the show notes, Matthew. Being a fairly big comic book guy, this department, the damage control, has been a thing for forever. I mean,
now I'm on the record. I don't read a ton of Marvel comics. I've read Cap. I've read some Cap, but I haven't spent a lot of time in the Marvel universe. So this isn't something that I'm aware of.
It actually, I think it had its own limited run at some point.
Okay. Okay.
So this is actually a big thing, and I believe there were several stalled attempts at getting a television show done.
Okay.
It hasn't panned out for whatever.
Yeah,
like,
none of the Marvel shows have panned out. So I mean,
well, except for Netflix, I'd say. I would argue.
Well, no, I mean on network television. Sorry, Netflix is its own thing. I know count Netflix. Yeah.
But yeah, so it is this thing that does exist in the universe that literally just cleans up after all these ginormous battles. And I think it's generally portrayed as fun and campy and silly, and it's just these blue collar people that go to work and clean up all these.
That kind of reminds me of what they were gonna do with the DC show that was on TV, Powerless. But then they kind of switched it. Yeah, that seems like the same kind of... But yeah, that makes total sense. The only other thing that kind of annoyed me really big about this movie is the plot hole about the timeline. Because they do the whole, 8 years later, but, that would make this 2020 in this universe. So, yeah, they kind of screw themselves with, the timeline of everything, of, when things take place.
So why do you think they threw it so far ahead?
I don't know.
Maybe because they want.
Maybe, yeah.
Well, yeah,
it doesn't make
sense.
a lot of sense. So it's not a big deal. It was just one of those minutia things that stupid geeks like us get totally our panties in a wad.
That would mean Civil War is that far ahead too.
Yeah,
roughly.
I didn't. It was so weird too because I didn't even when they flashed 8 years later. I just thought, oh my gosh, has it been 8 years since Avengers? I didn't actually do the math in my head because I was just watching the movie. I was just going along with it. So I'm like, oh wow, it's been 8 years since Avengers. That's just what I assumed. But yeah, it's weird that it's really strange that would be put in there. I'm sure maybe they'll explain it to us at some point. Who knows?
Yeah, hopefully they'll retcon it somewhere. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm interested to see what you guys come up with ratings for this one. So, yeah, let us have it, Daniel. What Spider-Man: Homecoming? What you got?
All right. Well, I love Spider-Man. And I love the MCU.
And so you love Iron Man.
And I love Iron Man. Oh my goodness, it's like
your favorite threesome.
It's almost like this was tailor-made for me. It's not. It wasn't perfect, certainly, but it was a lot of fun. And it's we've been kind of doing these darker, grittier movies in the MCU lately. It hasn't been since probably Ant-Man that I had this amount of unexpected fun in a Marvel movie. So that was exciting. That it's just so lighthearted. I guess Guardians as well. But I really enjoyed the film. I don't think it's perfect, and it's not top tier Marvel either. So it's for me, it sits at a really good, a good watch, a lot of fun, not perfect, some minor issues, but I'm very excited about Spider-Man. I was so excited to see him on the screen. This is the closest version to the Spider-Man that I love, and I hope that will only continue to get better and better. And I'm so excited just to see him in this universe. That was the biggest thrill for me, to see him here. And then of course we're going to see him pretty soon here in Infinity War. So I'm very, very excited about that. He's such a big, important part of the Marvel Universe. It always felt like there was something missing with him not there. And so, but to this film specifically, I really enjoyed the younger take on it. I liked that it was a high school movie, that we're dealing with. It's not like any other Marvel movie in that sense, that everybody is, established and super awesome and super heroic, and it's the younger 15-year-old kid, and he's just trying to figure this stuff out, and he doesn't have all the answers. So I don't know, if I had to rate it, I guess I would give it like 4 out of 5 instant kill modes.
What is with the instant kill mode? I don't want to kill anybody. What about you, Bruce?
I don't know if this is my favorite Spider-Man movie, but it's up there. Spider-Man 2 was always my favorite one. So I have to compare the two side by side at some point. But what I liked about this movie, that it was a lot of fun. I did like it taking place in high school. It's, it is the John Hughes Spider-Man Home Alone story. So it's kind of, I liked it. It was fun. It was very witty. I loved the portrayal of Spider-Man, the actor who played him. It was just a good, fun Spider-Man movie. I enjoyed the story, the performances, the whole shebang. Maybe didn't have the weight we were discussing earlier, but I think it has some weight to it, but maybe not as heavy. But I think it's what I liked about it. So I would say I give it almost a full box of Uncle Ben rice.
The non-existent Uncle Ben.
Well, that right. Uncle Ben exists in any universe.
Well, let's hope so, because that's some dang good rice. You know what? You guys are both absolutely right in pointing out that this is a cute movie. I mean, it's just really cute, and it's fun, and it legitimately is a John Hughes superhero film. And there's nothing wrong with that, in the same way that Captain America the Winter Soldier wasn't afraid to be a, kind of gritty 1970s espionage type film. I think that's great. I do think that the movie suffers from a fear of the previous iterations of Spider-Man. And I feel like they are legitimately afraid to touch anything that has anything to do with what I would consider the core of who Spider-Man is and why he is as a character. And I do think that hurts the movie. And I also think that it hurts the character Spider-Man, and I think it hurts their willingness to touch anything that has anything to do with Spider-Man that's been done in the previous films. And I think that's too bad, because I feel like Marvel had the opportunity to say, you guys screwed the pooch so many times, let us show you how it's really done. And they won't do that, and that's too bad. For all my criticism of the movie, I didn't hate the movie at all. I'm with you, Daniel. It's good. I don't think it's great. I think it sits in the middle of the Marvel films. I mean, legitimately, I was looking at my list. It's pretty much right in the middle. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I'd say this is 2.5 to 3 out of 5 lost Aunt May scenes. So, it's right there. It's maybe average above average for me. So, but I mean, hopefully they will take this success. This has been great at the box office already, and they'll be emboldened to really dig into some of the Spider-Man mythology, maybe that we've never really seen on screen, and bring that to us. That would be awesome, because I think he could be, and as we talked about, Tom Holland deserves it because he's the best Peter Parker and the best Spider-Man there is. When it comes to Spider-Man movies, I'm with you, Bruce. I still think of Spider-Man 2 as being the best. I do need to go rewatch that one now to see if it holds up. So we'll see. Maybe we'll do that on the show sometime. So, but God, great show, guys. This is so much fun. I love when we have different opinions and we're all just kind of banging back and forth about the thing. And I think we had a great discussion about the film. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let us know what you thought on Twitter or Facebook or any of the places that you could find us. Really appreciate the fact that we do this and get to do this because our associate producers through Patreon. We got Ken Tripp and Davis Grayson, wonderful gentlemen who've been sponsoring us through Patreon for so many years. It's a huge enterprise to put this together, the Trek FM network, and there's no way that we as the hosts can do this alone. We need your help. So go over to patreon.com/TrekFM. See how every little bit that you could give each month can help make sure all of the podcasts that we do here keep coming to you each and every week. There's a lot happening here, and so I hope that you will check it out. And I really am excited for what we have coming next here on Trek FM. There's so much happening. So again, that's patreon.com/TrekFM. Now, Daniel, when you're not, in the theater, loving Spider-Man and Iron Man, wishing you, one was on either side of you, and maybe you were wearing a suit with Karen, where can we find you?
You can find me all over the place on the internet. On Twitter, you can find me at OneUpDan. That's the number one, not the word. I have an Xbox podcast, if you're interested in that, called Zed. Check it out. As well as I'm with you on the Nerd Party over there in SETI Alpha 3. So you can find me all over.
And Bruce, when you're not wishing that you could get one of those fantastic subs there in Queens, where can we find you?
Oh my gosh, I really would want one of those.
I know, who wouldn't?
I know, I'm craving it right now. So you can find me on Twitter at Admiral_Rex. You can find me here on Trek FM on Literary Treks with Dan Gunther, where we discuss Star Trek books and comics. And you can find me on the Star Wars Report as producer and occasional, lots of the times, maybe all the time, co-host of Star Wars Report. And you can go to the StarWarsReport.com site to find that there. And I'm always in the Babel Conference.
Awesome. Well, you can find me on Twitter at MattRushing02. You can also find me here on the network doing The Orb with Chris Jones. We're talking about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I am also on the Nerd Party Network, hanging out with all the guys over there at SETI Alpha 3. I haven't been on the show, but, I mean, we hang out at the Nerd Party because it's a party. That's what you do. I'm doing Aggressive Negotiations with John Mills. I hope you'll check that out. In fact, we just recorded a very special episode after our trip to Skywalker Ranch. And so make sure that you check that out. You can also find me doing Owlpost, which is a Harry Potter podcast. Andrea Kaufman and I are walking through each and every chapter of the book series. And it's been a blast so far. We're right in the middle at this point of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. So make sure you check that out. And I'm doing one more show, which is called Cinema Stories, and that is looking at film through the lens of faith. And you can find that and all of the other podcasts wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple Podcasts or any podcatcher. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and y'all come back now, you hear?